All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Because today, we're going to uncover a mystery that's probably been driving you crazy since what, middle school? You know the feeling. You spend hours, literally hours, reading, highlighting, studying, and then the test hits, and your brain is just totally blank, zero. Well, today we're breaking down some incredible insights from a really powerful new framework. Get ready, because we are going to completely transform the way your brain absorbs information using clear, actionable steps that will totally rewire how you approach learning. Let's get into it.
The source material we're looking at hooks us right out of the gate with this super relatable scenario. I mean, have you ever just stared at the exact same page for 3 hours? You're tracking the words, maybe dragging a highlighter across a few lines, but when you look away, you feel like your brain is totally full, yet completely empty at the same time. It's such a weird, frustrating feeling, right? You know you put the time in, but the knowledge just isn't sticking. Honestly, if you're quietly nodding along right now, just feeling that exact frustration, go ahead and comment yes down below. It's okay to admit when the results just don't match the immense amount of effort you're putting in. And look, this explainer isn't about some mythical top student who never breaks a sweat. No way. This is about you, the person who is working incredibly hard only to get that crushing disappointment when the grade comes back and it just doesn't reflect your hours of work. But before we fix it, we've got to get real about where we currently are.
So to actually fix this, the source text challenges us to a pretty brutal self-audit. It exposes this massive gap between what we think studying is and what it actually is. Okay, ready? 1. Do you actually know the material, or do you just kind of recognize it? 2. Are you genuinely learning, or are you just keeping busy? 3. Could you explain this to a 5-year-old? 4. Is your phone anywhere near you right now? And 5. Do you truly believe you're just not smart enough, or are you maybe just using a terrible method? Let those sit with you for a second. If answering those made you feel a little exposed, well, I promise you're in exactly the right place.
But here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. If you felt totally called out by those 5 questions, it is absolutely not because you're bad at learning. Seriously, you aren't lazy and your brain is perfectly fine. The reality, you've just been trapped in a system that was fundamentally designed to fail you. Think about it. We are always told to learn, but we're basically never taught how to learn. Well, that changes today thanks to the source framework we're unpacking, How to Study Like a Genius by Shadow Books. This book systematically tears down those 5 brutal audit questions we just talked about, and it replaces our flawed default habits with a totally strategic system. So let's walk through exactly how this book answers each of those 5 questions, starting with the biggest trap of the whole bunch. Addressing that first question from our audit, the book explains a critical psychological difference, and that's familiarity versus memory. Look, when you just reread your notes or scan a textbook, your brain sees the words and goes, "Oh yeah, I know this." But guys, that is a complete illusion. It's just a false sense of familiarity. And guess what? It vanishes the absolute second you're under exam pressure and that textbook isn't right in front of you. True memory, the kind you can actually rely on, requires something totally different. It requires active recall.
So what is that? Active recall means closing the book entirely and forcing your brain to truly, genuinely struggle to pull the answer from scratch. And here's the secret. It's not supposed to be easy. You have to force your brain to struggle without your notes. Because that very struggle, that really uncomfortable feeling of grasping for the information in your mind, that is literally the sound of your brain getting smarter. If it doesn't hurt just a little bit, you probably aren't actually learning it.
Which brings us right to our second major trap, confusing the time we spend just sitting with a book with actual genuine learning. We've all done it, right? We sit at our desks to appease our own guilt. We want to feel busy because society tells us busyness equals productivity. But just sitting there with a textbook open while your mind wanders off, that's just distracted busy work. It's totally passive, and honestly, it is a complete waste of your valuable time. And the data backing this up is just staggering. It really comes down to a simple ratio, 1 to 6. One incredibly focused hour using an active recall system beats 6 hours of distracted, passive busy work every single time. You have got to stop measuring your studying by the clock on the wall and start measuring it by the intensity of your focus. You can actually buy back so much of your free time if you just commit to that one focused hour. Now let's see how this builds on that 5-year-old test from our audit. The rule is simple. If you can't explain a concept simply, the chunk of information you're trying to swallow is just way too big. Your brain has limits, you know. So to fix this, you need to identify the edges of the concept, break it down into tiny, super manageable chunks, and then try explaining it to a 5-year-old. When you strip away all that complex jargon, it really forces you to understand the actual mechanics of what you're learning, rather than just memorizing fancy vocabulary. All right, tackling the phone problem. Question 4 of our audit.
The author hits us with this really stark reality. Attention is the gate to memory. If your phone is sitting next to you, buzzing, lighting up, or even just existing there tempting you, your attention is divided. And when your attention is divided, that gate to your memory literally slams shut. It is that simple. You aren't successfully multitasking, you're just failing to learn at full speed. So put the phone in another room. Protect the gate.
Finally, we are dismantling that devastating fear of just not being smart enough. The book makes this incredibly powerful argument. Genius-level learning is not a trait you're born with. It's not locked away in your DNA somewhere. Genius is a method. It's a skill, and it's a system you can learn, exactly like riding a bike or playing an instrument. The people setting the curve in your classes, they don't necessarily have some magically superior brain. Nope, they're just using a much better system.
But there's a really deep psychological truth behind why we avoid these better systems. Most of us default to passive methods like highlighting or rereading simply because they feel safe. Testing ourselves with active recall feels scary. Why? Because it immediately reveals what we don't know. It punches a huge hole in our ego. So we just stay in that comfy little trap of highlighting, choosing the illusion of competence over the hard reality of actual learning.
To break out of that trap, you've got to embrace a massive shift in perspective. You need to start seeing that knowledge gaps are not personal failures. Actually, scratch that. They aren't failures at all. They're just data. They're just feedback telling you exactly where to focus your energy next. When you stop studying emotionally, beating yourself up over what you forgot, and start working strategically with your brain's natural mechanics, absolutely everything changes for you.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final high-stakes challenge just to see if you've been guarding the gate to your memory. Right now, without hitting replay and without checking your notes, can you actively recall and teach the absolute most important thing you learned here today? Seriously, force your brain to struggle for the answer right now. Do that, and you've already taken your very first step toward learning like a genius.